It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
If you're someone who lives in an area where it's so expensive to buy real estate and you feel like it's impossible, then I have something for you. I just released a free guide that's going to give you the 8 steps you need to take to buy your first out-of-state property. I bought several properties out of state, living in California, investing in Ohio, and you could do the same. It's just a matter of having the right information. So click the link in the description of this episode to get your free guide today. Cash flow is important, and other things are too. So can you talk a little bit more about, for a new investor, let's say who's buying their first property, in addition to the profitability, what are the other factors they should be considering in their numbers? And then also as they consider the property itself and its condition, like what are some things they should be thinking about and focusing on?
Yeah, so I'll start with the property condition. So old houses have old houses problems. It's things will break, and it's hard to really gauge what's going to break. But you really have to factor into your numbers. So, say example, my first property I bought was a 1910 build. All old internals. Like I said, the roof was old, the plumbing's older, the siding's older. So a lot of stuff I didn't really think about going in. So you really got to think about the overall condition of the home and when are these things going to be due for replacement, and really factor that into your numbers. Because if you just buy a place that's super old for a super high price and think that you're not going to come out of pocket in the next year or two, then you're going to be in for a big surprise. So that's one of the biggest things I would say is the physical condition of the building. I would almost recommend, a good friend of mine said he only buys 2 properties. He says, I only buy really nice properties. I only buy something like really bad properties for a really low price, because all the in-between stuff is where you get in trouble. You buy wrong and then you end up still coming out of pocket for a ton. And I'm not saying that's the wrong strategy, but for me, I learned I'm either going to follow that same thing where I'm going to buy something that's completely fixed up and I don't have to worry about it for the next 20 years or so, or something that needs work, but I'm getting at such a discount that I can, absorb that and pay for it and then refinance later on and get my money back. And in terms of, other things to think about, location, you again, with the property I bought, if there are no jobs, then it's going to be hard to find good tenants, and then next thing you have lots of vacancy, and then it just turns into, it gets very expensive and very timely. It consumes your time a lot. So something to consider. And in terms of numbers, there's some of the main things I would say think about are your expenses are, your obviously your PITI, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That's kind of your primary thing. You'll know that once you get your mortgage. Think about your expenses. I usually put about 5 to 7% for my expenses on a monthly basis. That number can be higher if you're in a much older property, which I would encourage you to to put on. You have your CapEx, which are kind of your big ticket items, your roof, your furnaces, and that number is something you create once you kind of you estimate how much life you have on those things. So if you have a furnace that's going to last another 3 years, factor that into your numbers, into your CapEx monthly savings. And there's a few other variables such as, landscaping, snow plowing, and other things like that. But I would say those are the top. And also property management. A lot of people just say, hey, I'm going to manage this property. I don't need to put that. I don't need to factor in 10%. Yes, you do, because until you manage property, you will not know what it is to manage property. And you may be quick to get out as soon as you jump in. And if you don't have that 10% buffer, you may be going negative. So just be careful with property management. Make sure it's there. As great as you think of the landlord you think you're going to be, keep that number there.
Definitely. Do you use a property manager?
Now I do, yes. So just as of recently, it's more of a time. I want to scale. And really, I think a lot of landlords and property owners get caught in being small time landlords and nitpicking and trying to do everything. And when you got a couple of 2-3 families and you're trying to do everything, it's so not worth the time to do it all. If you're managing 100 units or, and you're building your crew, then that may be worth it. But if you have 2 to 3 units, yeah, it's great in the beginning because you learn a lot. But doing that for, 10, 20 years, it's really, for me personally, not worth the time or money if you're looking to scale. But yeah.
Love it. Appreciate that breakdown. And it's very important for people to think about all those things because, like you said, you could look at the numbers on the paper, you could throw it in the calculator and it looks amazing, but it's all these other things. Like it's all these other things you got to think of. So appreciate that detailed breakdown of all that.
Yeah, no problem.
So what's the current status of that property that you mentioned was like 45 minutes away? Like how's it going these days?
It's going to be sold next week.
Okay.
So a good buddy of mine, I had lunch with him. He's a lender, and he said, and I was speaking about my experiences, and I brought up that property and just said, you know what, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that in the future. Like, I really don't like the property. And then he said, why don't you just sell it? And for some reason, I never thought that. I just thought like, you got to hold it for the next 10 years. And he said, well, the market is still relatively okay. Interest rates are up a little bit, but stuff's still selling, decent. He's like, just sell it. I'm like, that's the smartest thing I heard in the life. I said, yeah. And then like literally like a week later, it was on the market, listed, and got over asking. And everybody thinks it's like, they were in my place. Everybody thinks it's this great deal. And I'm just like, all right, on to the next investor to learn. and I'll take that and move into a smarter investment,
Definitely. And one thing you mentioned, you said you assumed you had to hold it for the next 10 years. And that's what a lot of people say, right? Hold forever and never sell. Can you talk a little bit more about that and your thoughts on that? It sounds like you had a change of thought once it occurred to you, like, hey, I could just get out of this headache. So let's see. Look, if you could speak a bit more to that.
Yeah, sure. For me personally, I think it's a combo of things. For me, it was just time. How much do I value my time? I was at that point where I was willing to take a loss in the property because I also realized with the time I would get back and just the mental power I get back, I'll be able to recycle that money I get from that property into a smarter investment in the future. So for me, it was peace of mind. So not everybody has to hold a property. I think a lot of people just are embarrassed, to be honest. Like, I don't want to take a loss. They don't want to look like a fool because they made a mistake. But I would encourage you, if you're in a situation and you can get out, because you're going to learn from it. You're going to make a little mistake, but the cut is going to be so much deeper if you wait 3 to 4 years until you're way underwater or something is going on with that property or whatever it is. And it's going to be 10 times worse. So just cut your losses if you need to. Don't be embarrassed. A lot of these investors out here, including myself, have made mistakes that they just don't speak of a lot, but we all make mistakes. So don't feel embarrassed and just cut your losses and do it.
Love it. Love the transparency. Love the transparency. So you mentioned earlier the second house hack in a 4-unit. Talk to us about that transition, why you wanted to do a second house hack, how you found the deal, all those good things.
Yeah. So, and I'll be transparent on this one. I wouldn't say this is another one that we rushed into. So we did a lot of rushing. All of this happened in the first year and a day. We literally bought all this stuff, not all, but the 3 properties within a year and then a day for the next house hack. So we were like ready to go. But we were such in a rush to go after units that I don't think I did it right. So this place that we're in, I don't know why, we overpaid for it. Luckily, it's in a B-class neighborhood, so it's in a nice neighborhood that we enjoy living in. So we have that, and tenants are paying mortgage, so on and so on. But we did overpay, and it reflects because things happen as we're still learning. Taxes go up, they reevaluate the property, and it's like, holy crap, look at this new tax bill. All right. But it's not the end of the world because this is our primary residence, so on and so on. So it was an MLS property that we found, the MLS. Just nothing complicated about it. We just bought it. We did 5% down in my wife's name, FHA, on this one. So it was a lower down payment. But we are happy with living here. Some plans for this property. Now we're thinking about highest and best use of the property. We may actually either do Airbnb or short-term rent or a midterm rental on it to kind of, because it's in a nice neighborhood, the units are nicer, and now we have long-term tenants. So we're considering converting 1 or 2 of those units into midterm or short-term rentals, and then making the highest and best use of the building. So that's where we are now.
Love it. And you mentioned so when you purchased the property, was it fully occupied in the other 3 units, or did you have to find all those tenants?
Yeah, so all the units were occupied, but one of them was occupied by the owner. And the cool thing about this house is, I wish I could show you a picture of the outside, but it was originally like a 3-family, but somehow in the 70s, they built a attachment to the house off to the side, which is like a tiny single family. And that's where we live. So it's almost like we have our own single family, but it's attached to a 3-unit where all the other tenants live. So we're pretty isolated. And it's pretty nice.
That's pretty dope. You don't have to worry about anybody banging on the wall or upstairs or downstairs. That's a sweet deal.
Yeah, for sure.
What's up, y'all? Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. Thank you so much for watching another episode. Definitely take a moment to subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Also, visit our website, blackrealestatedialogue.com, and follow on Instagram at Black Real Estate Dialogue. Talk to you soon.